Okay, we've got a game here against a player that is rated over 2000 themselves, and we're going to show you about this horrific bishop that comes into the corner. It sort of fianchettos itself into your side of the board. It's very unpleasant. So you're going to see how I deal with that, and hopefully learn a little bit about how to deal with it yourself. So let's get straight into it. We have got e-pawn opening, and I'm playing Alekhine's defense. I'll just quickly run over the idea that Alekhine came up with this defense because what it does is it gives unpredictable games, unpredictable board positions. It helps if you're playing against people that play systems, then it helps to play Alekhine because they're not going to be in familiar territory as much of the time. You will know if someone knows how to play against Alekhine because they will do very specific pawn moves. So there's your second prezi for using Alekhine. That's the first move they should make. Then you must move the knight here. The second move that they should make if they're playing against Alekhine correctly is to move their c-pawn 2 squares. And they haven't. They've moved their d-pawn. So we now know that this player is not used to playing against Alekhine or does not know the correct move. So that is bonus goodies. All right? Bonus goodies. So let's carry on. So now we can do this. We don't have to move the knight. Now he does the c4. The correct move, but it's a move late. We've got a hole that we can move into, or we could move over there. I'll move over there because we need to try and create a good movement structure within Alekhine because it's a very compact defense. We need to make sure that we don't run out of squares to run to if these pawns start to advance. So that's an important aspect of Alekhine, possibly the most important. Structural integrity and structural looseness.
Check.
So out I come with this bishop here. Can exchange it if I want to. I wouldn't want to exchange it because it's my strong bishop. If you look, my pawns are on opposite colour squares to that bishop, and his pawns are on the same colour. That makes it my strong bishop. Now it's just a generalisation, and it can change. It can change through the game. So, but I should keep it for now. It's a very useful defensive tool on this side of the board. Now he comes to bishops in the middle. Funnily enough, this is a position that I like to do a lot. Bishops in the middle is very powerful because it gives them two directions to fire in.
Kingside castling.
Now he knows I'm castling kingside. And so out comes his queenside attack piece. And I decide immediately I can push here. I've already got the quantum. What do we mean by quantum? We mean that if he takes that with his pawn, I recapture with my knight. He recaptures with his knight, and I recapture with my queen. I'm the one that ends up on a piece on that square. I don't lose any material, but I end up with control of that square. So I call that winning the quantum. Well, not winning the quantum. I call that an even quantum in a way. Winning the quantum is where you actually end up with an extra pawn or something. So, but anyway, the quantum's in my favour, so pawn goes forward. He can take that en passant. If you don't know what en passant is, it means he can take that as if it moved only one square. If he has a pawn that could take it as if it moved one square, which he does. So he could take that with his e-pawn if he wanted, and he'd have to take it by moving his e-pawn onto the square that my pawn would have moved on if it had moved only one square. Okay, so that's just in case you didn't know that. So let's carry on. He decides to let these sleeping dogs lie. Again, he is trying to make sure that my position ends up too compact and a pawn wins one of my pieces. That's how enemies often play against Alekhine. They try to squeeze you with pawns. But as they squeeze you with pawns, what they do is they create weaknesses in their own position. His d-pawn, for example, could easily become very weak at some point. So let's carry on. Queen comes there and gets doubling with the bishop. Now you've got to watch these things. That means he's got check with taking my h-pawn. I have to fianchetto, and this is where the horror begins. That move that you dread. I dread it. I don't like it. I do not like this move. But after you've lost a couple of rooks in various games, you get used to it. You just have to move the rook away. Or sometimes I let the rook go, and then I win the endgame because bishops can be more powerful than rooks in the endgames because of the way they can link onto pawns. But in this occasion, I decide that this is a strong player, appears to be strong enough, certainly got a scary name, to move the rook out the way for now. The other thing that does is it means that I'm playing with frustration. I'm making my enemy frustrated by moving that rook out the way. That could work well with an impatient, aggressive player. Frustration can be a good weapon against them. Let's
Queenside
carry on.
Castling.
He castles queenside. That old chestnut, right? Oh, if you castle kingside, I'll castle queenside. And then the idea is then they run all their kingside pawns up towards you. Well, does it look like that's going to work? Especially with my queen bishop combo. I feel well defended against that. In fact, I feel like pushing this pawn forward to block his queen further. Of course, he can take this one en passant as well, remember, as if it only moved one square.
Important.
And he does on this occasion. So now you see the demonstration. And I take it with bish. Look at that bishop. It's covered by the queen and the knight. So one of the things about this very, very compact defense that is called Alekhine, named after the great chess player Alekhine, is that it can be quite strong in terms of pieces protecting each other because they're so close to each other. I like to clone my knights. I call it cloning them, where you have one knight, a knight's move away from the other. I always think that's a good idea. Wherever you can do that, you should. And now I offer the exchange of the bishop, because if he takes that bishop, I recapture with my king, and all of the threat has gone, and he's left with this rather lonely looking pawn that he's advancing on my king. Queen comes here defending the bish. Well, I don't want to take it then, do I? Because that would bring his queen right up to the brink of my camp, and I don't really want that, do I? You don't really want that. If it did happen, though, it might be quite good to have the knight here, because then I could attack his queen on the square where the bishop is now, and then I could also go and do a nice knight fork and win one of his rooks. So there's lots of good Ian's possibilities there, and that knight fork would also be looking at his bishop with check if he does move that rook. I mean, there's lots of goodies there in that. Now he does a funny move with his knight. It's clearly intended so that he can bring his knight up to scare my knight, or perhaps stop my knight from advancing to the square I was talking about. Now, bishop comes out. White bishop. I haven't used it yet. In fact, I have not used any pieces on the queen side yet, which is quite extraordinary, really, when you think about it. This is how strong Alekhine can be. So even though I've got his bishop there doing that horrific thing, I'm okay for now. Comes over with the rook. I've still got enough pieces defending all of that lot. And I decide that actually this bishop should move to that square. Now, why is it moved to that square? It looks a bit unpowerful, doesn't it? It looks a bit weak, but actually it's not. The point behind this move is that it enables me to start moving the e-pawn up that file, and if something gets taken, I can advance my d-pawn on his knight, revealing an attack with the bishop at the same time. So we'll see if that happens. Okay, so knight to here, so that I can begin this advance. And he's just doing a pawn pushing exercise here. We'll let him carry on with that. I'm going to begin with my own pawn pushing exercise, which is just one pawn, so it's quicker. Now look, he seals his bishop in. My knight can now go there very happily. And in fact, I mean, there's no point in my taking that bishop, because then I would end up on a pawn on a square, one of his pawns, where he could do a checkmate with the queen later. So there's absolutely no way I would ever want to take that bishop now. His bishop, though, is powerless. It is taken out of the game. As far as I'm concerned now, it is gone from the game. So I'm happy about that. His knight comes here. He's trying to attack that pawn that I've moved forward, but if you look, I have it defended enough times already. But why not add more? I was going to bring another rook in, but it's too late. He's taken it already. So I did my magic move. Now, look what's happened. I've attacked an undefended pawn with the bishop as I attacked that knight with that pawn. So that was the whole idea, was that there would be something probably in the line of that bishop to attack, potentially even his queen. Not so lucky, but lucky enough. He moves the knight here, which is a clever move because it defends that pawn in a way. It's a blocking manoeuvre rather than a defending manoeuvre. But now I've got two of his knights coming up a little bit close to me, so it's not so great. I can, though, minimise things a little bit there, which makes the board much, much safer for me. And it does something absolutely devastating to white. Can you see what it is? Can you see the devastating move that I've got in my pocket now? And the funny thing is, it relates to the very bishop that was tormenting me. I have one of those bishops as well. And can you see what it can do now? I think you've seen it, haven't you? Queen in line with king, never a good idea. I waited a long time for his next move, and to my joy, that's what it was. Just that rook over there. And so, bingo, bango, bongo. The only thing he can do to save that queen is block with a rook, but then I just take the rook and we do it all again. So in fact, the correct move for him here is to take the bishop with the queen, which he does. Recapture with the knight. And I've got a lovely fork there with check that's going to win a rook, and I bet you he hasn't even seen that now because now he is in full panic mode. He can't do a check with the knight that wins my rook because my knight is now covering that rook. So that was just luck. I didn't design that into it.
Check.
So he can try to do that check, and in fact I can capture that with the rook anyway. I'm happy to give up a rook for that lot. I've still got this fork. Bingo, bango, bongo. Takes there, and I take that pawn. And now everything is good. All is light and dandy. And I've got my rook covering the back rank. He can't do any rook-bishop combination checks. And he's dead in the water. That's all she wrote. Comes here with the pawn, just a little blocking manoeuvre for my potential queen moves or whatever they are, but I have this beautiful pawn move here. If he takes that, I will check him with the rook. If he doesn't take it, I will check him by taking the pawn with the queen. And he can't protect that pawn very easily unless he goes to the back rank. So just simply attacks my queen. Thankfully, I'm not in line with my king. And check. We do plan B there. Now, in fact, I had a checkmate here, and you know how it is. Even when you get to a high level of chess playing, you sometimes miss the obvious checkmates. It's blindingly obvious. It's here.
Checkmate.
But you know how it is with pawns. As you're running them up towards the end, you get all dizzy with excitement. So I'm looking at the pawn thinking, oh, shall I move it on another square? Can I do some weird, turn it into a knight or something? No, I did this. Check with the bishop. Actually, I kind of thought it would be checkmate, but it's not. Well, the reason it's not checkmate is not because the king can escape it, but because his rook can go here. And in fact, I could have done a funny check there, where his rook can't take my queen. So that's where it would have gone, which actually would have been quite pretty. And then he has to go there because the rook is pinned, obviously, with the bishop. And then it would have been all she wrote.
Checkmate. Check.
But that's how it ended. He resigned, quite rightly, because I had not taken the checkmate I should have taken. But what we've learned here is how to defend against someone else fianchettoing their bishop into your camp. Right? That's what we've been learning today. So if that has helped you, and obviously that was Alekhine's defense, but if it has helped you in any way, do let me know in the comments below. Let me know if you think I've got things wrong in the comments below. I'm always interested to hear your ideas. Do like and subscribe if you want to see more. I'm always uploading chess videos. This is Chess Voices, the most relaxing chess channel on YouTube. So till next time, have a good game.